But there is some backcourt discussion that we've got to talk about, Ethan. And unfortunately, I'm just going to go to the bad first, because as much as we believe in his potential, we love him to death. It has been a very rough stretch as of late for our guy, Devin Vassell. I do want to give him credit. I will say the Phoenix game, I watched that one from start to finish. I thought he played really well defensively in that game. And you see that on the box score with 3 steals and 1 block. But even in the game where he played really well defensively, Ethan, 5 for 14 overall shooting and 1 for 5 from 3. And that is something that has been a struggle, or has basically been the trend over the past 5 games. And even before that, you see before that, there was a little bit of some momentum that we had going. But essentially since De'Aaron has come in, it's been a struggle for Devin whenever it comes to shot making. And that is really the big appeal for Devo when it comes to what we feel like his strength is.
Yeah, he's shooting 25% from 3. You can see that on your screen in the month of February, which is basically, since we've gotten De'Aaron Fox. And that's kind of the opposite effect that we anticipated, Jude. So I don't know if there's like some unforeseen fit things between Devin and De'Aaron that, the untrained eye just didn't anticipate. But you'd think having a guy like De'Aaron who draws attention in the way that he does and attacks the paint would just open shots up for Devin Vassell. And to be honest, to me, they have. He just hasn't been able to take advantage of them. And in the last 5 games, he's playing just horrifically on the offensive end of the ball. And that's kind of where you want him to thrive is next to De'Aaron as an off guard, as a off ball mover, coming off of screens and knocking down open shots. And he's shooting, subpar from 3-point land. And I would be able to forgive that, Jude, if he was shooting 50+% from 2-point range, but he's shooting 42.8% from the field, which is just not great. So to me, the rest of this year is just up to him to prove himself.
Yeah.
To prove that these are just fluke games, that he's in a slump, and he needs to average 20 plus for the rest of the year. And that should be theoretically easy because Victor's no longer getting shots.
Yeah.
So he is unequivocally the second option. Now, will Stephon overtake him? Potentially. That's kind of what the trajectory seems to be for Stephon Castle. But just on paper, comparing age, comparing salary, comparing, potential of what they should be on paper, Devin Vassell should be the second best player on this team for the rest of the year.
Yeah, 100%. As we talked about at the All-Star break, we were kind of having our mid-year breakdown. We said, hey, we're going to wait a little bit for Devin because we felt like just the circumstances as well as the injury, like we wanted to take all of that into that account. We are at that point now.
It's gotten worse.
Exactly. I wish I had more to add to what you said, but it's just been a struggle for Devin shooting the ball. He's a tough shot maker. As much as we have seen some defensive strides this year, just as of late, the impact that I know Devin has within himself to have, I have not been seeing it. And maybe that's a fit thing, and maybe that's something that we're going to learn over time with De'Aaron Fox, that maybe it just doesn't mesh, and then we'll have to make decisions based off of that. But as TG Canoes and Kayaks said earlier, he's getting paid like $25 million now.
Yep.
And we've got De'Aaron Fox as well. And I know Wemby's out, but still, this is the trajectory. And like you said, for the rest of the season, as much as it is kind of like a tank, it's also kind of like everybody go out there and bust your ass for minutes on the team.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really where it's at for Devin. It's been a struggle as of late. We've seen the flashes this season, but we got to see it come back. I mean, I wish I had more like in-depth analysis there, but I think that's really the bottom line.
I think that's completely true. Unfortunately for Devin, we're at the point where we have Stephon Castle, who's averaging like 19 in the last 10 games or something crazy like that. So he's on the up and up. We have 2 lottery picks as well in this next draft, apparently, or we should at least. So Devin Vassell, we want you to be the 20+ points per game guy. We want you to be the third option right next to De'Aaron Fox and Victor Wembanyama. But if you're not going to do it, then frankly, we can find a 3-and-D guy that makes probably half your salary that can fill that hole and at least shoot 40+% from three. Now, maybe he's not going to have the same potential or the same shot creation, but if Stephon Castle becomes who we think he's going to be, there's your
Mhm.
shot creation, there's your playmaking, there's your defense. And if we do somehow end up getting Cooper Flag and another big or whatever in this upcoming lottery, there's our two other guys that are on the up and up that could potentially be, big shot makers down the stretch. So he's kind of pushing himself into the same category as Malachi Branham if he continues to play this way, which is really sad because we talked about this the same time last year, and I said Devin Vassell will be our second best player. This is before De'Aaron Fox, obviously, but he's starting to play like our fourth or fifth best player at this point.
Yeah. The worst part is the comparison. Like I hate that I see the parallels between Malachi and Devin. Like if you would have told me this last season, I would have said you're crazy. But I see it. I hate to say it. I still think like the defense is not comparable, but there's still
Mhm.
times, as much as I give him credit in that Phoenix games, there's still other times where he
He's got bad
disappears.
moments.
Yeah. So for sure, I acknowledge those as well. Um, but that really kind of is how he feels when you think about last season when we had to start Malachi at times, and it was just like, if he's not making the pull up midi or he's not making his catch and shoot jumpers, what is he really bringing to the table? That is kind of what it feels like for Devin right now in the starting lineup. It's obviously a different situation, but I think that's a very fair comparison.
I think you just give him the rest of the year to prove himself, Jude.
Yeah.
And then if he plays worse or honestly at the same level that he's played the last few games, then you start thinking about trades.
Yeah. I think what I would say, here's what I'll say. The Spurs are going to know better than me. And that's true. We do have a lot of games left. So I do want to take the end of the season into account. Maybe this is just the fact that we drafted him and like we've kind of grown it. And these, him and Keldon were they came in when we started doing SSPN. So maybe like there's a little bit of a emotional attachment there. But basically the point I was going to get to is I think I would like to wait until the trade deadline next season for Devin. But also if we're getting the stat lines that we've got the past 5 games for the next 25 games, I'm not going to be mad at off-season trade conversation either.
Right. Agreed.
But you want to get to some good news, Ethan?
I do.
So the other guy that is around Devin Vassell's age that we have been following since we started doing this podcast, who has been struggling this season, is Keldon Johnson. And the past 3 games, my dude has not been struggling. He has had the exact opposite performance as Devin Vassell. And again, that's not to just crap on Devin, but genuinely, while Devin has kind of fallen off, Keldon has come out playing like he's playing for that roster spot next season and playing like he's getting paid $20 million a year as well. Obviously, the 28 point, 5 assist, basically the 2022-esque performance against the Pistons was a 15-point loss. And last night, his 18-point performance as well was also in a blowout loss. So that really is reminiscent of 2022 in a way. Keldon has still, I watched these games, Ethan. He's playing his tail off with Victor out. And you saw he still contributed 6 for 9, 2 for 4 from 3, 15 points, 4 rebounds in that win against Phoenix as well. Averaging 20.3 points per game in the last 3 games. Obviously, consistency is the key for Keldon. We talked about that all year. But I mean, look at all of the games basically before the last 3
Mm-hmm.
for Keldon.
Yeah. He definitely seems to have found a rhythm. And from what I've seen, it feels like he is playing with more patience. He's still being aggressive. He's still getting to the rim and playing with great touch, but he's also finding guys better. He's letting the game come to him better. And I know that's kind of an oversimplification of it, but it feels like for the
No, you're
entire
right.
year, he's been forcing it. He's been forcing it because he hasn't been able to get his shot to fall. And these past few games, he's just been okay, I'm going to drive to the rim, but if they double team me or they come up, I'm going to drop the pass off. Or someone cuts, I'm going to get it to them, right? Or I'm going to kick it out, and I'm not going to force my shot up when it's not the opportune time to do so. And it's resulted in 3 really, really solid games for him back to back to back. But it is, like you said, consistency for Keldon Johnson. He needs to continue this for the rest of the year
Right.
because 3 games aren't going to forgive him of a year full of sin either. He's had a real difficult time playing off the bench next to these guys as well for the majority of the year.
Yeah. Again, as much as we're harping on the positive here, that if we go back to what we've seen throughout the rest, these games that we see, before the All-Star break, then obviously that same discussion that we had with Devin will be the case as well. But the way, again, I don't want to be too optimistic. It's just 3 games, knock on wood. But when I watched that Phoenix game, that first game coming out of the All-Star break, just the way he came out with the energy he had off the bench, you could tell he was really motivated. Like, regardless of whatever the future holds for Keldon Johnson, you could tell coming out of the All-Star break, he's like, not just, okay, Wemby's not here, so we all got to have a better impact, but they're paying me $20 million, man. Like, I need to be the 6-man energy guy.
Mm-hmm.
He was controlled, but he was still TG Canoes and Kayak said, he was very aggressive. It's like a controlled aggressiveness. It's hard to explain. It's like you said, he's still using his strengths, like driving to the rim, but he's not taking, a contested shot if he doesn't need to. He's making that extra pass. And you've kind of seen that with the 5 assists in the Detroit game as well. But a lot of hockey assists for Keldon as well, but really just a lot of flow and a lot of connectedness in traffic, where maybe where Keldon slowed down this season, where he's just kind of been standing on the side of the wing, taking catch and shoot jumpers and hasn't been very efficient. Definitely, he just seemed so much more like himself out there. Like that nickname, the Mustang, I've really seen that in the last 3 games. Anyways, I'll end it with Keldon there, but hope he can continue this. Hope this was a turning point for him.
Agreed. Nothing to add.